We're called to be in covenant. And that's not a I'm committed if, and that's not a committed because it's a I'm committed even if. Even if you don't do your part, even if you let me down, even if it's inconvenient.
Welcome to the Real Life OverTime Podcast, the place where the members of the Real Life Ministries sermon team go deeper into the weekend sermon. Watch them as they unpack, unfold, and unravel the weekend sermon like never before. So fasten your seatbelts, hit play, and join us for Real Life OverTime, where every episode is an adventure and this sermon doesn't end on Sunday.
Hello, Real Life Ministries. Welcome to the OverTime Podcast. This is a podcast where we really sort of debrief the messages from the weekend before, and we get our life groups more information, maybe deal with some nuances, some ways to look at this that might have been more than what our sermons were able to give. There's always more information we could give, and cutting sermons down is hard for some of us, harder for some of us than others. And so we get to go a little bit deeper and provide some context. And you also get a chance to see who's preaching at the other campuses. This week, I had Pat Lessard preach here, and he isn't able to be here during this time, so I'm sort of standing in for him. Chris was at Coeur d'Alene, Chris Short. Jim was up north, and Gabe was at Hayden. And so we are in a series right now called Between You and Me, and we've been dealing with this idea of maturity in Christ is to grow in our love for God and love for others, so to grow in relationship. So not just I love you, but I'm going to let you love me too, the one another's. And so if we're going to grow in maturity, it means we're going to grow in relationship, our ability to be in relationship. And we've looked at some different aspects. We started out with communication. What does a godly communication look like? We went into trustworthiness. What builds trust in a relationship? And how do we grow in trustworthiness? And how do we trust others? And then that led to boundaries. Are there boundaries around trust? I can forgive. I can even love. But that doesn't necessarily mean I trust you. That's going to have to be proven as there is trustworthiness. So, and then this last week we sort of, then we went into conflict resolution, which was, that was a big one. And then this last week we went into commitment. You're going to have to be committed to certain behaviors, attitudes, if we're going to actually be in relationship. Yeah, Jim, you used Acts 2. So unpack why you used Acts 2:42 and following.
Oh, I just think it's one of the most exciting stories about relationship and commitment in the Bible, because we see firsthand the church, as it's getting off the runway, living this out in a very practical way. And so the word in Acts 2:42 that I think has jumped out at me so much is the word devotion, which really is this picture of a constant pressure and a commitment where you're leaning into something as a priority. And so they obviously in that text they were devoted to the apostles' teaching, which really is to the Lord first. And I love that picture. And where I went with that was I jumped off of there for a moment and went back to abiding and its importance, and the fact that Jesus in John 15 set the model of priority and covenant relationship, where he said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. But then he talks about this mutual relationship. If we remain, I and you and me, we remain together, we'll bear much fruit. And so I just kind of went down that road. And then jump back into Acts 2 after we established the fact that if we're not abiding, devoted to God and abiding on a regular, consistent basis, then we're just not going to get anywhere when it comes to relationship, right? So then I went into what did koinonia actually mean, which truly is a partnership. It's a shared life together in something other than just even drinking coffee, right? And out of that koinonia, out of that fellowship that they had, the Lord was working in that process. They grew, they started to connect relationally, they met needs. As they grew together, the relationships emerged, were strengthened. That spilled outside the church as the Lord added to their numbers daily. So it's just this powerful picture to me of God's plan and his purpose for his church.
That's great. You know, Chris, it says that they were devoted, all those who believe were baptized, 3,000 in that day. Those who had given their life to Christ, been baptized, they were devoted to the apostles' teaching, which then out of that leads to everything else they did. Because of the teaching, they were devoted to fellowship.
Yeah.
They were devoted to prayer, to eating together, communion, selling their possessions. All that stuff came from the teachings that Jesus had given the apostles, the Holy Spirit had inspired in them. Time. They actually met together in temple courts from house to house. You can't have deep relationship if there is no time.
Yeah, that was what I was going to jump off on a little bit, is I think in the world that we live in a very convenience-based relational equity that's like, I have so many options with fast food. That was one of the stories I started with was, went through a drive-through line and was ordering burgers for my family, and I'm about ready to pay for it, and they realized they don't have burgers. They don't have burger patties. So my deal was like, so what were you guys selling me? So I was out. I was gone from that restaurant for years to come because they lost my trust. And the good news is I had so many options that it's like, I can just go to the next restaurant. I don't have to stay here. But I feel like that's something that's on our mindset of our generation, is we can just move to the next relationship, and we have so many choices. But I think the key ingredient piece is it's time with a purpose. It's like, it's not just time and it's not just purpose, it's overtime. And when I think of people that I've seen in a discipleship relationship, it's like, it takes a lot of time for us to see transformation take place. And when someone shortcuts it and they're like, hey, I gave my life to Jesus 3 weeks ago. I don't know why I'm not changing yet. Where's the fruit? And it's
They
like
want microwave Christianity.
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Some of these things take years for you to chip off the edges of that. You need relationship to go deep. And for me, the cool part in the outcome of that text is what was the outcome was that everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and the community grew. Like, they couldn't hold back the church, that there was such a desire for real relationship that they had been missing. And I think the same is true today. Like, there's such a need for real relationship that, isn't just out as soon as something's wrong, that they push into depth, which is time and it's intention. And it's sometimes, like you said, it's this sharing burdens together that is just so different.
I know we've all had the same sort of theme. What is it about people, Gabe, that they want to fit everything, all the components of the faith into an hour and 15 minutes once a week? Now, again, that's assuming the national average is Christians go to church 1.1 times a month. Only 20% are in any sort of life group or Bible study. And so they measure the church based on how much what happens in an hour and 15 minutes.
So I talked about Christian consumerism, and I think very similar to your guys, I talk about 4 levels of commitment, and these levels aren't bad in their proper context, but out of context, they're really bad for relationships. I talked about level 1, which is the commitment of convenience. I'm committed to this place because it's convenient for me. And that's good if you're going to the gym, if you're going to a restaurant, if you're going to a coffee shop. It's convenient, so I'm committed to going to this place, right? That's fine. But when we take that level of commitment to convenience into the church, as long as they sing the songs I like, as long as they have the parking spot that I need, as long as I don't have to walk far, as long as it's not too crowded, and as long as they have a good kids ministry, whatever it is. If it's convenient, I'm in. If it's not, I'm out. And I just think that that's never what the church is supposed to. Jesus said to pick up your cross daily and follow me. That's not convenient.
Deny yourself, pick up your cross daily.
Deny yourself, pick up your cross. And that's not convenient. So Christianity was never meant to be. Now, are there conveniences that we can have in church? Sure. We pick people up in golf carts because we want to give them a walk.
In the rain.
In the rain. So convenience isn't the problem. But when we take convenience and go, my relationships with the church, with my family, with my friends, it has to be convenient, otherwise I'm out. We miss what relationship's supposed to be.
Okay, what's 2, 3, and 4? Come on.
Yeah, so two is the commitment of contract, which is a legal contract, legal, and that's fine when you're in a legal agreement or in a service contract or whatever that is. But when we take that into marriage, that's why we have an over 50% divorce rate in America, because it's a contract, not a covenant, which is number 4.
I'll do my part as long as you do your
Yep.
part. Now, which
I'll
of
love
us
you as
ever
long as you love me.
does our part?
That's why marriages end, because someone inevitably will break the contract, right? Like, I won't love you the way I'm supposed to. That happens all the time. Level 3 is where we want to get to as a church, and that's a commitment to community, commitment of community. The first two are I'm committed if. This one's I'm committed because. I'm committed because I belong to a community of believers. And so I'm going to be committed to this church, these people, my life group, my staff, my family, like, because I belong to them and they belong to me. And I went to Acts 2:42 through 47 as well. They were devoted because they had the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, the breaking of bread, and prayer. And I just asked our church the question: if we sold all of our possessions, if we considered nothing to be our own, if we loved people well, if we prayed for people, if we encouraged people, if we shared meals together, if we opened up our homes, would the Lord add to our number daily those who are being saved? Yes, because He knows my people are going to be taken care of there. And that's the type of church we're called to be.
In a world that doesn't have all that, to see that in there,
That's right.
people are drawn to it like water for a
That's
bottle.
That's why I
right.
want that.
Yeah.
And then we went to the highest form of commitment, which is the covenant relationship that God calls us into. And we use some cool correlation between Genesis chapter 15 and the Abrahamic covenant and God's covenant with us. And they can watch the message to see the details of that. But it was like the marriage relationship and our relationship with God, we're called to be in covenant. And that's not a I'm committed if, and that's not a committed because it's a I'm committed even if. Even if you don't do your part, even if you let me down, even if it's inconvenient, I'm still committed.
Back to that, Ephesians 2, out of reverence for Christ, submit
yourself unto
therefore
that.
one to another, right?
So the same thing that you did, I used the language of the marriage covenant, for better, for worse, richer and poorer, sickness and health, and so on. And I just talked about that's language that prevents us from making excuses and bailing on our commitment.
Yeah, it deals with
That's
all
covenant.
the what ifs.
That's the what ifs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're
That's
poor,
good.
we're sick, even if. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we've been going through this series, you've got the communication piece. What does it look like to speak truth so that it can be heard? What does it look like to understand communication? How do we protect trustworthiness and build trustworthiness? And then how do we set right boundaries? Conflict resolution. We've got to be committed to these sorts of behaviors and others. Which one of the ones did really, Chris, was like, wow, okay. That one, not just for me, but that one right there, it needs to have some focus.
Yeah, probably the one that consistently comes up in me and my wife's relationship, with extended family, with challenging relationships, is the boundaries conversation. It's having wisdom. When is it appropriate to keep distance? When is it appropriate to evaluate, get counsel? I mean, that's just one. And I've heard that from a lot of people. Like, there's so many strained relationships. And part of it, it's like we live in a world full of sin and challenges and mental health and you name it. And so navigating those issues is hard. And so I think it was really practical, helpful pieces within the boundaries conversation. And I think even in this topic for commitment, it's recognizing, well, when is it appropriate to say, hey, there needs to be a change in our commitment relationship? When is it appropriate to take a step back, to get counsel, to walk away for a season and do that? I address that in my message, trying to be delicate with it, because I don't want to give anyone a license that they can just walk away. But there are things that happen in a relationship where there does need to be a distance. There needs to be a change. That's what boundaries come into play. If there's abuse of some kind, like, there needs to be a change in that behavior. Can't continue. And
you actually have been reading a book by Gary Thomas, who, by the way, Gary Thomas wrote a book called Sacred Marriage, one of the greatest books I've ever read. But he wrote another book that you really like.
Yeah, I addressed it in the end of my message because I feel like it was appropriate. The book is called When to Walk Away, and I'd say that would be a great resource for our listeners to dive in. It's hard to summarize it in a message or even in a few points, but really the main idea is there is an appropriate time to walk away. If you're not seeing repentance, there's an ongoing emotional, spiritual, physical harm. Their presence enables unhealthy behavior, or staying actually compromises your integrity or faith. And think about that isn't just in the context of marriage, that's in all types of relationships. If you're in a workplace where you're being asked to compromise your integrity and do something that's illegal or immoral, man, it might be appropriate for you to walk away with the right kind of conversations. But To me, the boundaries conversation is a really essential one,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like all these are great ideas until like you come to a crossroads and,
This leads to this whole discussion of forgiveness. I mean,
Yep.
if you don't define forgiveness the right way, you can really make a mess of yourself and others, right? Forgiveness, just because I forgive you doesn't mean I give you the same access,
Yep.
right? Doesn't mean our relationship is reconciled in the sense that trust is restored.
Absolutely.
If I think forgiveness is something where I forgive and forget,
Yep.
um,
Can I make a comment on that real
Yeah.
quick too? Would be in our Regeneration Ministries and Reengage Ministries, they have a really great tool where you actually walk through the difference between forgiveness, making amends, and reconciliation. And it's a journey they take you on to recognize exactly what you're talking about. There is a difference between my part in forgiveness and releasing kind of this owed debt, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily make amends or have reconciliation with that person. And minding that out, I think that's what's so great about some of those programs is you can do it with people who can help you kind of see it from a not from a distance, but from a different angle where you're so close to it, and then they can go, that's crazy. Like you shouldn't be allowing that anymore. So,
well, that's so important, guys, the groups, because I get so in the forest and the trees and I miss up concepts and, okay, how do I love you and forgive you, but there are boundaries. I can't rejoice with unrighteousness. I can't give you access to certain things, because by giving you full access to me, I'm giving you full access to my family. And I am able to handle certain things that might influence them in other ways. I mean, this is just such this is really complicated. That boundaries issue is really complicated.
Yeah, and conflict resolution it's in that same vein, right? Because how do you resolve conflict with someone who doesn't want to resolve it with you?
Yeah.
How do you? I had a guy come up to me after last week's message on conflict resolution. He goes, how do I forgive my dad when my dad's dead? My dad's dead. I never forgave him before he died. How do I do that now? How do I resolve that conflict? How do I reconcile that relationship? Obviously, that looks different now. But I just think the biggest thing, reconciliation is for the relationship, but forgiveness is for me, right? If I'm holding on to unforgiveness, that doesn't impact anyone else but me. I mean, it may trickle out on other people, but it primarily impacts my heart and my relationships. And so I just think that you can always forgive someone. You might not reconcile that relationship, but you can always forgive them for something that they've
There's
done.
an old phrase that we've used around here from time. I don't remember where it came from. Somebody way smarter than me, but he said, a lack of forgiveness is like a poison you drink yourself, hoping it kills other people.
Right.
And it just changes the way you love. It changes the way you trust. And then then it keeps you from trusting and being in deep relationship with future people because of your past resentment and hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, when it comes to the issue of relationship, it comes back to the conflict resolution one. It's super important to me because, first of all, I have to understand that conflict is inevitable. Because we live in a sin world, we have the devil, I have a sin nature. I said this in the message I did. I can't even get away with no conflict by myself. I'm always wrestling internally. I don't even agree with myself. I go back and forth, so I don't even need you to be in conflict. Now, I think you're in the same boat, to one degree or another, or on one subject or another, or at one season or another. So, okay, we got conflict is inevitable. The question is, and maturity really, the depth of maturity in relationship is based on, if we're going to have conflict, how we resolve it will determine the depth of our relationship. And if our relationships are shallow, that impacts me. I was made for relationship. That reflects on God. If I'm made for relationship and God's supposed to give it to me, but I can't have it with anybody or won't, either because I shut up, I go silent, or I attack and explode. However I deter a relationship, it impacts me, it impacts the relationship with God, it impacts, or the reputation of God, it impacts other people who need relationships. So I could be withholding something or destroying something that was for them too. And so, I see people do different things with conflict. I see people withhold, pull back and don't ever deal with it. Right? They just they're a peace. They call themselves a peacemaker, but they're really a peacekeeper. I'm just not ever going to open up. I'm going to go internal, isolation. I'm going to withhold. Then others blast away, right? And what else do people do?
Well, I mean, there's a passive aggressive. Everything's fine until it's not, and then when it's not, I backdoor you or get really resentful. And
when somebody says that's the last straw, well, that means there's a whole bunch of straws that you never
Right.
resolved, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that last one, well, I didn't even know they were there. I just got an explosion.
Right. Yeah.
That's stuffing it.
Yeah. For me, conflict is the one that spoke to me loudest. And when I preached it, one of the things that personally I had to deal with was Matthew 7. And that's take the plank out of your own eye, the log out of your own eye, and how that's just such a priority before you before I attempt to speak into your life about something that maybe you've done that I feel hurt from or whatever that is, that I evaluate my own heart and I'm like, show me, God. Psalm 139 with David, search me, O God, and know my heart. If we don't start with ourselves, then we blow whatever it is out of proportion. We come in hot and heavy, and then you end up having to defend yourself. And before we know it, it escalates instead of...
Yeah, you push my buttons, I push your buttons.
Yeah.
But what does taking the log out of your own eye do? When you focus on your own mess, it humbles you. Mm-hmm. It changes the way I'm going to interact with you, my expectations of you. I'm able to go, okay, hold on, am I seeing this because it's true or because of past triggers, past hurts?
Well, what I do with mine first, and it's a discipline, I think, for all of us, and that is, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? Why am I offended? Why have I got offended? If you ask yourself those two questions and you
what was my expectation?
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
I also think about there's a piece of forgiveness that's being reminded of what I've been forgiven from, the grace that I've been given. Because it's like when we start saying, hey, this person, they broke my trust, they hurt me, they deserve this. And we just reflect on, like, what is that? What was I forgiven? Like, what was the gap?
How many times have I done this to Jesus?
Yeah. Then it's just humbling because it's
pretty
like
sobering.
Yeah. It's like, oh man, yeah, they spoke harshly, or even they did something that was sinful. But if you look at the whole of what I've been forgiven, it doesn't even add up.
Which, by the way, I can go there and still have appropriate boundaries.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just because I've been forgiven, and I'm resting in God's grace, doesn't mean that means I should just, then I'll just let you have whatever territory you want. I'll let you do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. I think the point of going internally and abiding is not allowing my anger or fear or whatever's driving me to dictate what I do next. It's pulling back and reflecting and getting things in order so that I think clearly to do what I need to do in the conflict. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Instead of reacting emotionally, rashly, out of anger, which my anger is like, it's explosive in that, I don't always get loud, but I definitely can articulate frustration and anger and pinpoint bombs and big bombs, scalpel and hammer, right? So how do I get that in order so that the purpose isn't to vent anger on you and destroy you or put you in your place, but to understand you, to become curious? I think, again, the devil loves to help crack things, create a gap, fill the gap with misinformation so that he can create more of a gap. And then how do I deal with things in the right way here? What triggers? What am I believing? What am I doing? All right, what does God want to do with this so I'm in my right mind? And sometimes I don't know, so that's where I come to you, Gabe, or one of the other guys in my life and go, okay, what do you think about this? And help me think through it. And not gossip to you about, hey, this guy did this or this. No, I got a guy. Because I don't want you, if I really want wise counsel, I don't want you to get on my side so that's the two of us.
Right.
Boom.
Right.
I don't want to maneuver this. It's like, am I right or am I wrong here? And I'm not going to tell you who, because I don't want to impact your relationship or you to think negatively. Yeah. Here's the situation. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're talking about in this relationship series is how do we become those people to each other?
Yeah,
right.
That's good.
Yeah,
we have to communicate with each other. We have to trust each other. We have to work through hard things together. We have to set boundaries. Like we have to resolve conflict. Like that's the type of people that we're trying to be, is the person that someone else can come to, and we'll speak the truth in love to them. We'll tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. We'll walk through it with them. We'll be that type of person. And I said to our church, to our campus this week, I said, this is the type of church that we are trying to be imperfectly. Like, we are imperfect. That's what we're striving for, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that, you know, it's like anything. What the number one word you better learn if you're going to be in relationship is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2 words.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Right? Because I am going to blow it.
Not I'm sorry, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
I'm sorry,
that if you would have done
I'm
this,
sorry,
right?
period.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, though, then having to go, okay, is this their perception of me? Did I do something wrong here? I really need to think about that. Or is this just their perception?
Yep.
And then if it is just their perception based on past triggers in their life, I'm still sorry you're in that state.
Yeah.
That's not what I meant. The devil's working hard here. I think in conflict in particular, and boundaries and all of it, if God is a God of peace, relationship, the enemy is a murderer, and he destroyed relationship with God, which led to destruction of all other relationships. The enemy in particular hates relationship because we were built for it. If it's all about loving God, loving others, then the enemy of God is all about destroying this and this. So we have to understand there's more going on than just me and Chris having a discussion potentially where we misunderstand each other. What's the enemy want to do with this? And bring him into the equation. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces in the heavenly realms. So it's not just what's going on in him, what's going on in me, miscommunication. There's a spiritual enemy that wants to divide the team in the huddle so that when they go to the line of scrimmage, using a Seattle Seahawks world champion metaphor,
That's a good one.
as they go to this line of scrimmage, they actually can win together. Get them fighting in the huddle, they lose at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
Well, guys, there's so much more we could be talking about this. We've done a lot of work on this, different workbooks we've done, relationship. We did one called Hope for the Prodigal. It has to do with family, but then I did one on just the power of together. These are all things that we believed in, tried to live out imperfectly over the years. That's the goal. That's the trajectory. I think the fruit of the Spirit in us is growing. That doesn't mean we don't have some ugly tree on the fruit at times. And we got to keep working towards that. And I'm glad we get to do this together. One church, 4 locations. Next week, we start a new series called Face to Face. We'll be getting ready to go to Easter. And we'll be looking at different interactions that Jesus had with different individuals. And I think it's going to be powerful. I hope you'll make sure you're there. God bless you. See you next week.